How's it going, New World? Sethphir here, and we are back with part 3, the final part of the Blunderbuss guide. Today we are going to be talking about gems, perks, and the gear associated with the Blunderbuss. If you're interested in the information behind the attributes and the skill build, I'd recommend you check out the previous 2 videos, which will be listed at the end as well in the top right, so you can go ahead and check those out if you want to know a lot more about the Blunderbuss and you may have missed the first ones. So let's go ahead and dive right into this. Now we're going to go ahead and talk gems for the Blunderbuss, and this is going to be a general thing. Pretty much every single weapon in the game is going to use the gem associated with the monster's weakness type. So if you're fighting against Corrupted, you'll be using the Arcane Gem, and if you are fighting against the Angry Earth, you'll be using the Fire Gem, and so forth. And then for your armor, you're simply going to want gem pieces that are slotted to suit whatever mutation it is for the current week. So if it is the Void mutation, you're going to want Void resistance. If it's the Hellfire mutation, you're going to want Fire resistance. So you're going to be trading out these gems quite a lot. The only thing that will probably remain static would be your gems and the jewelry. And for the jewelry, I would simply recommend going with like a diamond or a malachite if possible, because it will be something that will give you a decent amount of value no matter the circumstance. And it's a lot harder to fine tune your jewelry because your jewelry will most likely be crafted. That's where a lot of the best in slot pieces are coming from. So with gems out of the way, we're going to go ahead and dive straight into perks. There are quite a few decent perks for the Blunderbuss. The main standout one would be the perk behind Azoth Shrapnel Blast. It will allow you to put a 15% life-stealing leech onto the ability, which is very nice because this ability does a lot of damage in general, and I think this is my first recommended perk for the Blunderbuss, so that would be attached to your armor, so make sure that you have that. And then you're going to have a few split decision perks, basically, depending on your playstyle. If you're playing the single target build, which was one of my videos, you can see there is a perk for the claw shot. Whenever you hit somebody from 10 meters or further away, your next shot will be empowered by 19%, which is quite devastating. So that can be a good perk to have. I believe it's called Venturing Claw Shot. There is also a perk for the Splitting Grenade that will allow it to have Plagued Strikes, a little bit of healing reduction tied to the grenade. It's decent, it's not the best in the world, but it's something to add into there. And then finally, the other split decision would be the Mortar Charge perk. There is a very good perk called Resupplying Mortar Charge, and it says that whenever you kill something with one of the shots, you will be refunded an instant shot of the Mortar Charge, and it can go up to 3 times. So each single shot could refund an additional bullet. So if you're using the mortar to finish off a crowd of enemies, and you happen to land the killing blow on one of the weaker ones, you will instantly get another shot, and it can be very devastating. You can get up to 6 shots and put out a lot of AoE pressure. So this can be a very strong perk to have. So I would highly recommend you have, for every single build, the Azoth Shrapnel Blast perk for the life stealing. It's called Leeching Shrapnel. And then I would also recommend you have the Splitting Grenade just to have a little bit of healing reduction. And then the perk would be your choice, whether you're playing the AoE or the single target build, based on the Claw Shot or the Mortar Charge. So that's going to be it for the perks. Next, we're going to dive into the gear itself. So for the gear, you want to aim for medium armor, preferably as close to 23 without going over as possible. 22.9 is great. You can achieve that by having 2 medium, your choice of the helmet, the hands, and the boots, and 1 heavy. And then you can have the light pants and the heavy armor. And that will get you as close to the high cap of medium as possible. And that's going to make a big difference for your playstyle, because you're going to be able to have a lot more mobility as well as retaining a lot of the damage bonus from the medium armor and getting a lot of the survivability. The stat distribution we talked about in detail in the other videos, and it's just going to depend if you're going the strength build or the intellect build, but you're going to want 300 in one of those and most likely 200 in constitution after that. It's pretty standard. Most builds utilize this. You can take away from constitution and add extra points into the offensive stat if you feel comfortable with that, but you're going to have to do a lot more dodging, so I may not recommend that. I think the easy way to just be survivable and do big DPS will probably make you end up doing more damage in the long run. The next thing to keep in mind is to make sure that you always have orichalcum cartridges. So you're going to need these bullets. It's going to give you a 1.2 modifier, which is really, really, really strong. And you're going to need that because it's just going to ramp your damage up through the roof. And now we will finally go into the details of the weapons. What kind of perks should you have on the weapon? And my gun is not ideal at the moment, but what you're aiming for is essentially main stat, either strength or intellect. You want to have vicious, and you want to have keen. Keen and vicious are very important, so if you can get both keen and vicious on the weapon, that is fantastic. If it is a legendary weapon, you will have a third perk available, and I would definitely go for leeching if you do get that third perk available, because that's going to be something, or sorry, not leeching, keenly jagged. It's kind of your choice, really. Like, you can go keenly jagged, you can go keenly empowered, you can go leeching. It really just depends on your playstyle, I would say. For some reason, there's no refreshing move from what I can see with this weapon. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody can comment down below if you've seen refreshing move on the Blunderbuss, but I haven't seen it yet, so that's very unfortunate. But if it was there, I would definitely go for it, but I think keenly jagged and keenly empowered are very standard damage dealing options, and life stealing is just like a general blanket option for like, well, you know, I want a little bit more survivability, and it's something I can add onto there. So that's what you're going to be aiming for the weapon. For your other stuff is going to be the armor coming in here. The most important thing on your armor is going to be to have refreshing evasion. Refreshing evasion will give you cooldowns back whenever you exit the dodge animation, and especially if you're medium armor, you are going to be refreshing a lot. It does stack up per armor piece and per jewelry piece, so you can have 8 of them total, which is going to be massive because every time you dodge, you're going to refund 8% of your cooldowns, which the Blunderbuss is a very heavy cooldown weapon, especially in its AoE version, and this is going to help you to maintain very, very high damage. So the first thing you're going to be looking for on your armor pieces, that's going to be chest piece, all that stuff is going to be refreshing evasion. The next thing you're going to be looking for is a skill perk of your choice. So skill perk of your choice would be what we talked about before with the weapons. We talked about that claw shot, we talked about the leeching shrapnel, we talked about the plague grenade. Any of those, if you can get those on your armor pieces, that's going to be really, really good. And the third and final thing you're going to want for your armor is going to be, it can be a ward piece. So if you have a ward for a particular dungeon that you want to swap out, that can be decent, but most likely you're probably going to want something like vigor or invigorated, or even if you get a piece of armor from the dungeons, one of the elemental attunements that reduces the damage of an element. If you can get something like that on there, it can be pretty good. The third perk doesn't particularly matter too much. We can't use resilience here since resilience is only useful in PvP. The monsters are not critting at least as far as I'm aware. Maybe that changes in the future, who knows? That would be a pretty nasty surprise, but for now that is how it is, and that's where it stands. So you're going to be looking at those for the armor, and that's going to be putting you in a nice position. So remember, refreshing evasion, then the perk skill, and then you can look at things like the ward against a particular monster like Ancients or Angry Earth, Vigor or Invigorated, because they will reduce burn, bleeds, and weakens, and in a lot of the mutations they like to put these debuffs on you. So next we're going to have jewelry. We're going to go ahead and talk about that. So for the jewelry, the first thing that we are going to want is probably going to be refreshing evasion. Again, this is a very standard perk that will allow you to maximize your damage. And then after that, you are going to want to obtain health. If you can manage to find a third perk on it, that would be really impressive and that would be nice. But I would definitely go for Divine. If you can't get Divine, I would go for Purify or Stamina Regeneration on proc. Those are both very strong and viable options. Just depends on where you're at, and that can be either a Constitution piece or a Strength Intellect piece, depending on your build. But I would probably recommend Constitution for the most part, because jewelry is where I tend to get a lot of my Constitution from, and I get my more offensive stats from my armor in general. The next we're going to have is the ring. The ring has a lot of great options, but I think the most important thing on the ring is having keen awareness, which will give you critical hit chance. Having that is pretty much very, 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 very strong. You need that on most damage rings. And after that, I would go for refreshing evasion, because again, that's going to pump up your DPS and your damage. And the final perk I would go for would be leeching. Leeching is a nice, viable option on the ring. It will give you a bit of health back with everything you do, and it will keep you sustained and in the fight. So this is going to be probably the go-to for the ring. Next, we're going to move on to the earring, and the earring will probably have the same suit as everything else. Refreshing evasion is always the prime thing here. If you can go for con or strength or intellect, whatever you want to do. And then you want to make sure that you have regenerating. Regenerating is a very powerful ability. It's going to restore health based on your maximum health constantly, and it's going to keep you topped up and ready to be in the fight. So after you have those, you could also consider trading out regenerating for nimble. Depends on your playstyle if you want faster stamina regeneration or that health regeneration. I guess it really kind of depends. Do you have a pocket healer? Do you not? That could also be a viable option. But the third and final thing for your earring would be refreshing toast. It's going to lower the cooldown of all your potions by like 20 to 30%, and that's going to be very, very, very strong. You're going to want to be popping your health and regeneration pots constantly while you're in mutated dungeons, and this is going to be a fantastic way for you to keep up in health and ease a little bit of that stress off your healer. So hopefully that covers everything that you need to know for the Blunderbuss. That will cover the perks, the special damage perks on the armor and weapons, as well as the gems, so that should get you suited and ready to go for the mutation. I would definitely say that I recommend the single target damage build a little bit more, because I think that it has a good balance of AoE, and it also has a lot of actual damage for bosses. So if you are jumping into mutations, I would watch that first video, because I think that that build is a bit more general. It covers like all areas of the game, whereas the AoE build just kind of refers to a specific instance in which you can, you know, destroy monsters within a group, which can be good because the bulk of dungeons is just coming from the amount of sheer monsters that you have to kill just to get to the bosses. But with Amazon changing the game a little bit recently and saying, okay, we want to buff the monsters in the mutations and have them be stronger, like the actual bosses rather than the elites, I think that single target damage could be shifting towards that direction, so that's going to be something to keep an eye on for the future. Alright, that's going to be it for this video, everyone. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe, like, and hit the bell. As always, we have a Discord and social media in the description link down below. Make sure to follow the channel for more New World content as well as Lost Ark content, and we should have a little short clip of that infinite mortar glitch coming up here pretty shortly. I'm working on trying to develop a YouTube short for it, so just bear with me while I figure out the new happenings of how this system works. So we'll get that coming here really soon. All right, thanks for your time once again, and we will catch you in the next video.